Imagine being locked inside a freezing cold room, shivering, gasping for air, and realizing the person who put you there is your own daughter-in-law. All because she wanted to steal the $150 million fortune I built with my bare hands. She thought she'd left me to die. But when she came back home, I was waiting. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you welcomed into your family, this story will chill you to your bones. Stick with me, because the way karma catches up in this one is unforgettable. And before we start, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss the next Red Silk revenge story, where betrayal always finds its price. Money has a strange way of changing people. It can be a blessing, a comfort, even a shield. But in the wrong hands, it's poison. My fortune, $150 million built from decades of blood, sweat, and sacrifices, wasn't just a number in the bank. It was my life's work, the symbol of every sleepless night, every risk I took when others doubted me, and every dream I fought for when the world told me to quit. Yet, in my old age, I had begun to see how that fortune drew people closer, not because of love or respect, but because of greed. My daughter-in-law, Claire, was the most dangerous example of that. When my son first brought her home, I wanted to believe she was genuine. She was young, beautiful, with that polished smile that never seemed to falter. She clung to my son's arm like a prized possession and looked at him with eyes that convinced him she adored him. But me? I saw something else in those eyes. A calculation. A hunger. At first, I thought it was harmless vanity. After all, wealth attracts attention. But over time, Claire's behavior started to sharpen, to reveal the edges of her ambition. She'd drop comments about my estate, so much land, it must be hard to manage alone. She'd laugh at dinner about how old money should be put to better use. She'd ask questions, subtle ones, about my will. Every time, my son brushed it off. "Mom, you're just paranoid. Claire loves you." But I wasn't paranoid. I was cautious. Age teaches you that smiles can hide knives. I'd worked too hard to be careless. Too hard to let someone like Claire think she could play me like a fool. Still, nothing prepared me for how far she was willing to go. It began on a quiet winter evening. The snow was falling outside my estate, a sprawling property with marble floors that always echoed at night. I was sitting by the fire, reading through some papers, when Claire walked in with that same rehearsed smile. "Mom," she said sweetly, "you work too hard. Let me make you some tea." She'd never offered before. Not once. Something about the way she said it put me on edge. But I accepted. After all, I had learned long ago that when an enemy offers kindness, you don't reject it. You study it. I watched her pour the tea, her manicured fingers careful on the porcelain handle. She was chatty, too chatty, asking me about my business partners, about the foundation I'd been setting up, about whether I'd changed my will recently. I gave vague answers. Let her think I was distracted. But inside, my gut twisted. This wasn't conversation. This was reconnaissance. And then, casually, she said, "You know, it's so cold in this house. I can't imagine how freezing it must be in the storage rooms. Don't you keep one of those big industrial freezers in the back?" Her voice was light, like she was making small talk. But her eyes were sharp. That was the moment I knew. A few days later, it happened. I'd gone to the storage wing of the estate, where the industrial freezer was kept, an enormous unit I rarely used anymore. I was checking some supplies when I heard the door click shut behind me. At first, I thought it was a mistake. But then I heard it, Claire's laughter, muffled through the thick steel. A cold, echoing laugh that sliced through the air like a knife. "Let's see how long the old woman lasts," she whispered. And just like that silence, the realization hit me like the icy air around me. She had locked me in. My own daughter-in-law had left me to freeze, thinking she could walk away with everything I owned once I was gone. The walls pressed in. The air grew sharp in my lungs. My fingers started to sting, then burn from the cold. I leaned against the steel, heart pounding, trying to stay calm. Because panic was the enemy now. Panic would kill me faster than the cold. In those moments, memories came back. The first time I signed a deal that saved my company. The nights I worked in a tiny office, eating nothing but stale bread and black coffee just to keep the lights on. The day my son was born, when I swore I'd give him everything I never had. All of it, everything, was flashing before my eyes. And I thought, is this really how it ends? Frozen in the dark, betrayed by family? But then another thought burned hotter than the cold. No, not like this. I hadn't survived poverty, wars in the market, betrayals by so-called friends, only to die in a freezer. Claire wanted me gone? She wanted my fortune? She was about to learn the most important lesson of her life. You don't bury a woman like me without consequences. And when she came home, thinking she had won, she would see the truth written on my face. I was going to make sure of it. The cold wasn't just around me, it was inside me. My breath came out in thick clouds, my hands trembling as I pressed them against the steel door. Every second felt like a test, like Claire was daring me to give up, daring me to become the weak old woman she thought I was. But she had underestimated me. I hadn't built my empire by surrendering when things got hard. I had clawed my way out of hunger, out of debt, out of men who thought they could outsmart me. If I had survived all that, I could survive this. I scanned the freezer. It wasn't empty, boxes lined the shelves, some covered in frost. At the back, I spotted something, a broom handle I had left months ago after reorganizing supplies. My legs ached as I shuffled across the icy floor, but I gripped that broom like it was my sword. The door latch was old, industrial, but I knew its weakness. I had replaced it years ago and remembered how it locked. With every ounce of strength in my body, I jammed the broom into the hinge, pushing and twisting, my knuckles raw from the cold. For minutes, maybe hours, I fought with that door. My body begged me to quit. My breath slowed, my eyelids heavy. But then I saw her face in my mind, Claire's smug little smile. And that was the fuel I needed. With one last push, I heard it. Crack. The latch gave. The door swung open, and I stumbled into the hall, gasping as warm air hit my frozen skin. I had survived. But survival wasn't enough. Claire thought she had already won. She thought she had erased me. That was her mistake. I wrapped myself in blankets, warmed my bones by the fire, and as I sat there, one thought took root: revenge. But not the kind she'd expect. If I stormed into her room and screamed, she'd twist the story. My son would take her side. She'd paint me as a bitter, senile old woman. No. If I wanted her to pay, I needed to play the long game. I needed her to think she was safe. I needed her to believe she had fooled me. So when morning came, I plastered a smile on my face. At breakfast, when she waltzed in wearing silk pajamas, I acted like nothing had happened. My son kissed my cheek, oblivious, while Claire poured herself coffee with that same rehearsed grace. Inside, I was boiling. But outside, I was calm. Too calm. Because while she thought she had won, I was already writing her downfall. It began with small moves. I visited my lawyer that week, quietly amending my will. I shifted assets, moved investments into trusts she could never touch. I began speaking to my oldest business partners, men and women who owed me favors, who knew loyalty when they saw it. And most importantly, I began to document everything. Every cruel comment Claire made about me. Every strange accident around the house. Every time she pressed my son to ask about my estate. I was building a case. Not just a legal one. A moral one. Because when I struck, it wouldn't just be about taking back my dignity. It would be about exposing her for what she was: a thief, a liar, a vulture who thought she could feed off an old woman's fortune. One evening, about a week later, she tried again. I had gone to bed early, but the sound of footsteps woke me. Quiet, deliberate footsteps outside my door. I sat up, silent, listening. Then came the sound of a doorknob turning. Slowly. I reached for the lamp, turning it on just as the door cracked open. And there she was. Claire. Her face froze when she saw me sitting upright, awake, staring directly at her. "Oh, I thought you were asleep," she stammered. "I just wanted to check if you needed anything." Lies. All lies. I smiled, that same calm smile I had worn at breakfast. "How thoughtful of you, dear. But no. I have everything I need." Her eyes narrowed, just for a second. She knew I didn't believe her, but she couldn't prove it. And that was when I realized the power was shifting. Because I wasn't just her victim anymore. I was her nightmare. The one she thought she had buried, but who had crawled out of the ice to stare her down. And soon, she would understand the full weight of what that meant. Claire thought she had me cornered. She believed age made me fragile, weak, and worst of all, blind to her schemes. But she didn't understand one simple truth. I had lived 100 lives before she was even born. I had built an empire while she was still playing with dolls. And now I was going to dismantle her entire world, piece by piece. The key was my son. He adored her, blind to her cruelty. But love is fragile, easily shaken when the truth comes dripping out in small, undeniable pieces. I didn't need to scream accusations. I didn't need to beg him to believe me. No, I only needed to plant seeds and let them grow. It began at dinner. I made his favorite meal, slow-roasted lamb, buttery potatoes, the way he loved when he was a boy. Claire strutted in late, scrolling through her phone, barely glancing at us. "Smells nice," she said, tossing her bag on a chair. "Though, maybe next time, Mother, don't use so much garlic. It's provincial." My son frowned, just slightly. The seed was planted. I didn't argue. I only smiled sweetly and served his plate first, watching his eyes flick between me and the woman who had just insulted the meal he grew up loving. The next seed came 3 days later. Claire insisted on handling some of my paperwork. She wanted access to my accounts, claiming she was just helping me because I was getting older. I pretended to fumble with my memory. "Oh, silly me. I think I misplaced the statement. Could you check that drawer?" Inside the drawer, I had left one of her shopping receipts, $15,000 spent on jewelry in a single day. My son found it first. "Claire, what is this?" he asked, brows furrowing. She sputtered, claimed it was an investment piece. But the crack was visible now. My son's trust was no longer ironclad. Meanwhile, I strengthened my case in silence. I had my lawyer draw up documents, transferring ownership of certain properties. Quietly, I rewrote parts of my will, ensuring that if anything happened to me, Claire would be left with nothing but dust. And then I went one step further. I installed cameras. Small, discreet, tucked into corners she would never think to check. Every time she snapped at me, every time she rifled through my desk, every time she whispered venom into my son's ear, I captured it. Soon, I wouldn't need to say a word. The proof would speak louder than I ever could. Then came the night that sealed her fate. I was sitting in the study reading when I heard voices outside the door. "Claire and my son." "Your mother's losing it," she hissed. "She's confused, forgetful. We need control of her accounts before she does something reckless." My son hesitated. "She's fine, Claire. You're overreacting." "No, I'm not," she snapped. "She's clinging to money she doesn't even use." "Don't you care about our future? Don't you care about me?" I smiled to myself in the dark. Because I knew what she didn't. Every word was being recorded. Every poisonous syllable was another nail in her coffin. When she walked in later, pretending to check on me, I feigned drowsiness. "Oh, thank you, dear," I murmured. "So thoughtful of you." But inside, I was already envisioning the moment. The grand unveiling. The day I would show my son the truth about the woman he thought was his soulmate. The day Claire's perfect little facade would crumble into dust. The day came faster than even I expected. It started like any other quiet morning, tea in my favorite porcelain cup, sunlight spilling across the dining room table. My son sat across from me, distracted, his brow furrowed in thought. Claire was pacing, phone glued to her hand, whispering to someone about timelines and signatures. But then he asked it. "Mother, do you ever feel overwhelmed by handling everything yourself?" I looked up, meeting his eyes. He wasn't asking casually. He was testing me. Claire had been whispering poison in his ear, trying to convince him I was senile, that I couldn't manage my affairs. My lips curved into a calm smile. "Darling, the day I can't handle my own accounts will be the day pigs sprout wings." He chuckled. But his eyes stayed on me, sharp, searching. That was my cue. That evening, I invited him into my study. Claire was out at one of her spa appointments. Perfect. I motioned for him to sit. Then, without a word, I opened my laptop and pressed play. The screen flickered to life, and there she was. Claire. In my kitchen. Rolling her eyes, spitting venom about me. Calling me a useless old hag. Complaining that my money was wasted on tea and trinkets when it should have been funding her luxury. My son froze. I let the footage roll. Clip after clip. Her sneering at me, belittling me, plotting behind my back. Then came the one I had saved for last. Her voice, sharp, desperate. We need to push her out before she ruins our future. Once we get the money, she won't matter anymore. The room went silent. His hands clenched into fists. His face drained of color. He couldn't deny it, not when the proof stared him straight in the face. Mother, his voice cracked. How long have you known? I sipped my tea unbothered. Long enough to prepare. When Claire returned later that night, humming to herself, she walked straight into a storm. Darling, she chirped, tossing her keys on the counter. I was thinking, maybe we should finally look at those villas in Italy. Sit down. My son's voice cut like a blade. She blinked, startled. What's wrong? He slammed the laptop shut after replaying just a snippet. The color drained from her face. She stammered, tried to backpedal, but the mask had slipped. You've been spying on me? She gasped, glaring at me. No, I replied smoothly. I've been protecting myself. The argument that followed was volcanic. My son, shouting, demanding answers. Claire, crying crocodile tears, spinning lies faster than a spider spins silk. But none of it stuck. Not when the evidence was undeniable. Finally, she snapped. You're pathetic, she screamed at him. Do you think your mother cares about you? She cares about her money. That's it. She's old, she's selfish, and the only reason she hasn't dropped dead yet is spite. Her words hung in the air like poison. And my son saw it, finally saw her for who she really was. He stepped back, chest heaving. Get out. Her face twisted. What? I said, get out. I watched, calm, silent, as she packed her things in a rage. Jewelry clinking, heels stomping, muttering curses under her breath. She thought she was leaving with her dignity intact. She thought she still had time to regroup, to find another way in. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that her humiliation had only just begun. Because tomorrow would be the day the entire world saw the truth. And this time, she wouldn't just lose my son. She would lose everything. Claire left that night in a hurricane of slamming doors and glittering rage, but her exit felt hollow, like someone shaking a paper crown until the glue tore. She thought leaving would buy her time, to regroup, to call friends, to spin a story where she was the victim. She also thought she could hide the truth. She underestimated how many small things I had set in motion. The next morning, I called the one person I knew would move fast, Marta, the investigative journalist who had once written a careful piece about corporate charity scandals. Marta owed me dinner years ago, and I owed her the truth. I slid her the discreet, time-stamped files of Claire's footage, her receipts, and a neat dossier of conversations, bank nudges, and witnesses. I didn't scream betrayal, only facts. Marta loved facts. By noon, there was a headline that made Claire's phone go silent for the first time in months. Socialite accused of coercion, daughter-in-law allegedly tried to engineer inheritance scheme. Her phone exploded afterward, family, friends, sponsors, message threads of panic. Social media, which had once amplified her image, turned like a crowd that finally realized the performer was a fraud. Screenshots of her shopping sprees, the frozen recordings, and her own words flooded feeds. The commenters were merciless. The people who used to like her posts now called her shallow and horrible. The circle of people she'd used as armor began to peel away. Her father, her champion, called angry, then silent, then withdrawn. Clients who'd admired her taste suddenly couldn't be associated. The spa she frequented sent a bland press release. We do not condone such behavior. Small things, but they accumulated like snow. And the banks? They called the next day. Once lenders smelled risk, they tightened terms. A previously promised line of credit was frozen. The renovations she'd financed were put under scrutiny. The jewelry store that had taken her lavish purchases on generous terms started asking for documentation. Paperwork, debt, doubt, tiny gears grinding loudly toward collapse. Daniel watched all of this with the slow horror of someone who finally understands the extent of his own blindness. He came to me more than once over the next week, quiet, apologetic, ashamed. "How could I have been so stupid?" he asked, voice raw with regret. He said it as if a weight had been lifted and a wound had opened at the same time. "You loved what you wanted to love," I told him. "That's human. What matters now is what you do next." He did the hard thing. He called his lawyer, cut ties with the line of credit she'd pushed him into, and agreed to a mediated separation. He told his family the truth, admitting he hadn't listened when his mother warned him. There were angry phone calls, stunned relatives, and a few quiet allies who reached out with sympathy. The damage to their private reputation was real. The moral damage was decisive. As for Claire, humiliation wasn't a single moment. It was a slow erosion. She tried to fight back, hiring a PR firm, issuing statements about misunderstandings and elderly confusion. But the recordings spoke. The receipts spoke. The witnesses, employees she'd bullied and vendors she'd pressured spoke. The narrative she'd scripted for years unraveled line by line. A creditor's notice arrived. The finance company demanded immediate repayment for the car loan. The bank wanted collateral reassessed. She sold jewelry at a loss to cover short-term expenses. The buyers avoided public association. Her influencer deals evaporated. Those who once lined up to be seen with her now walked the other way. Pride, which had been fuel, became the match that ignited her undoing. One afternoon, Claire came by, not with fury but with an empty pleading. Her mascara had run from crying. Her voice was small. "Please," she whispered, "I made a mistake. We can fix this. I'll apologize, She reached out, but Daniel stepped between us. He looked at her with a detached gentleness that was more painful than anger. "This is on you," he said. "You hurt the person who loved me most. You hurt my mother. I can't pretend that's okay." Then, to me, "I'm so sorry, Mom. You should have never been treated like that." I didn't gloat. I listened. Daniel helped her find a counselor. She attended, awkward, defensive, pro forma. It wasn't theater. It was the first small crack of humility. But humility alone doesn't pay debts or reclaim trust. Weeks turned into months. Claire moved into a modest rental. Her fashion feeds dwindled. Her friends offered polite distance. She took temp jobs, worked at corporate events, and learned, slowly, the difference between image and integrity. The fall was hard, and in it I felt no pleasure, only the deep, clarifying calm of justice. For me, the aftermath was quieter. I reorganized my assets, tightened my private trusts, and made clear handoffs to business partners I trusted. I changed my will in sensible, compassionate ways. I protected charitable commitments, ensured my son would be cared for, and set up provisions that made coercion impossible. I published a private letter, distributed to family, lawyers, and my closest advisors, that explained my intentions and the rationale behind my decisions. Transparency, I'd learned, is the best defense against predators. The community's tone shifted too. Neighbors who once looked the other way came to tea, brought casseroles, and apologized for not seeing. Daniel's friends, once dazzled by Claire's sheen, now gravitated towards steadiness. Business associates who respected me for years finally expressed the gratitude I had quietly earned. It didn't erase the pain, but it healed something significant: trust. One evening, as the sun dropped behind the estate, Daniel and I sat on the porch steps while our grandchildren chased each other across the lawn. He squeezed my hand, eyes soft. "You saved me from more than her scheming," he said. "You saved my sense of what matters." I smiled, thinking of the freezer door and the broom handle, of all the small choices that lead to survival. "I didn't save you alone," I corrected. "You found your way back." Claire's story became a cautionary whisper in our circles, never to be cheered, never to be celebrated. She hadn't been destroyed by malice alone. She'd been undone by choices rooted in greed and entitlement. If there is a mercy in that, it's that the fall can teach humility, and humility can teach change. As for me, I no longer cringed at the sight of my own estate. I walked its halls with history and with hope. Money had once been a shield, then a target. Now it was simply what it should have been, a tool to protect family and to give back. So what's the lesson? People who build their lives on entitlement will eventually find that life prefers truth to illusion. If someone tries to bury you, don't go quietly. Gather facts. Build quietly. Protect your legacy. And, if you can, give people a chance to learn. Because revenge without purpose is just emptiness, but justice that restores balance, that is healing. If this story hit you, smash that like button. Tell us in the comments, what would you do if someone in your family betrayed you for money? And subscribe to Red Silk Revenge for more stories where karma finds its way home.